Today, I feel the need to don my best deerstalker hat, fill my pipe, and practice saying elementary in a knowing way as I peer into the papers, weigh up the witnesses, and examine the evidence for what is often claimed to be the most haunted house in London. Come with me as I investigate the nameless horror of Berkeley Square. The stories that exist about the haunting of number 50 Berkeley Square are truly terrifying. Two sailors break into an apparently empty property looking for somewhere safe to sleep, and while there, experience something so horrifying that one dies of fright and the other jumps out of the window in terror. A maid who sleeps in a particular bedroom wakes the household with sickening screams and is discovered frozen rigid, a hopeless and raving mad woman who never found a lucid interval wherein to tell what had made her so. In some versions, the poor maid can only repeat, "Do not let it touch me," before dying in an asylum. A skeptic arranges to spend the night, telling his companions that he'll ring a bell twice for help should anything go wrong. The friends respond to his later frantic ringing only to find him dead, the expression on his face so terrible that no one can look at it twice. Lord Littleton is alleged to have stayed in an attic room and shot at an apparition. A doctor and his friend investigating the spectre see a crawling horror, an appalling, hellish, damnable thing with extra arms instead of legs. A neighbour feels an inexplicable electric shock through the wall. A brave mother-in-law is found dead in bed, her open eyes wildly staring at the ceiling. The cause of death later reported as died by the visitation of God. And the reasons for the alleged presence of the horror are equally frightening. Did one of the property's owners keep his mad brother locked in the attic, feeding him through a hole until he died? Did a young woman kill herself by jumping from an upstairs window to avoid being abused by her uncle? Was a girl brutally beaten to death in an upstairs room? Or was black magic practiced on the premises by an evil magician who only came to the house once every 6 months? If you take a look online now, just type 50 Berkeley Square into any search engine, you will find hundreds of versions of these stories. Some presented as fact, some embellished with names for the people involved, some with dates, and a huge variety of descriptions of the nameless horror. It can be a brown mist, a bloated, pulpy beast, a white figure, a tentacled creature, a crawling, wriggling thing, a shapeless, slithering mass that defies description. The problem is that the reputed haunting seems to have been a very Victorian event. Despite Anthony Hipsley Cox saying in 1973 that a number of reliable sources list this as a haunted house, including Lord Littleton in Notes and Queries, or Charles Harper writing in 1913 that a something or other very terrible indeed haunts or did haunt a particular room. The evidence is sparse, and no one who has actually owned or occupied the property, either as a home or for business use, has ever provided a first-hand account of any ghostly goings-on. Let us start then with the facts. There is a house at 50 Berkeley Square. Over the years, it has been both a private home. Between 1770 and 1827, it was lived in by Prime Minister George Canning, and an antiquarian bookselling business. Maggs Brothers moved there in 1938. In 1859, the Honourable Miss Elizabeth Curzon, daughter of Lord Curzon, died in the house at the age of 91. But that didn't involve any foul play. The Earl and Countess of Selkirk, Sir Philip Grey Egerton, and the Maggs Brothers family and staff have all been safely living in and using 50 Berkeley Square without being visited by any floating, bloated, misty thing of evil. What we are left with then is a period between 1861 and 1883 when the grisly legend seems to have taken hold. But why? In their book Haunted England, published in 2010, the authors Westwood and Simpson say that 50 Berkeley Square was reported to be haunted in an article in Mayfair magazine in 1879. They add that the rumours of a ghost had also been discussed in an exchange of letters in Notes and Queries earlier in the 1870s. Notes and Queries is a journal that started in 1849 as an academic correspondence magazine in which people could exchange knowledge on subjects like history and folklore. And, luckily for me, full copies exist. Armed with my magnifying glass, I have been able to seek out the letters that appeared between 1872 and 1881, including Lord Lyttelton's enigmatic statement, "It is quite true that there is a house in Berkeley Square, number 50, that is haunted, and long unoccupied on that account. There are strange stories about it, into which this deponent cannot enter." However, in 1880, one correspondent advises that the house isn't haunted. It was merely owned by an eccentric gentleman who never went out and allowed it to fall into disrepair. A letter the next month provided information from the magistrate's court regarding a warrant being sought against the owner of 50 Berkeley Square, a peculiar gentleman named Mr. Myers, for non-payment of taxes. And then came more. Mr. Myers had been engaged to be married and had taken the property to make it the marital home. Just before the wedding, he was jilted, which was said to have broken his heart and turned his brain. Someone found a ghost story by Miss Rhoda Broughton, published in 1873, which was almost identical to the tale of the terrified maid. This enterprising correspondent wrote to Miss Broughton, who said her story was nothing to do with 50 Berkeley Square, and she regretted setting it in London as so many people assumed it must refer to that house. With all this information known in the 1880s, how did the tales of the nameless horror come to be so established that they still get reported as true? Well, a good story is a good story, and writers and publishers and the public all enjoy a scare, which ghost hunter Elliot O'Donnell knew. His lectures, articles and books in the early 1900s all contained ever more extreme versions of the apparition and the deaths it caused, and these were picked up by Harry Price, of Borley Rectory fame, Charles Harper, R. Thurston Hopkins, and J.A. Brooks, and grew legs, or tentacles, in the retelling. So where does this leave us? To paraphrase my pipe-smoking alter ego, when you have eliminated the completely made up, whatever remains, however dull, is probably the truth. There was a period of time in the late 1800s when 50 Berkeley Square was occupied by Thomas Myers, an unwell man of means who likely had Parkinson's disease as well as mental health issues, who hoarded possessions and hid himself away and took no care of his home. And isn't that sad? That an ill man living in a neglected property led to such wild tales appearing in the press, to gossip and supposition and the worst kind of speculation. Not everything that is unfamiliar or that deviates from the norm has to be scary. In reflecting on the tales of 50 Berkeley Square, I find a poignant reminder of the human tendency to weave fantastical narratives around the unknown and different. These days, the speed with which disinformation gets repeated, shared, and exaggerated means that the nameless horror lives on in articles, podcasts, and, yes, YouTube videos. I love a good ghost story, but this particular hidden realm seems to have arisen from overactive imaginations and careless reporting. It is my hope that the ghosts of Berkeley Square can be laid to rest with the application of Holmes-like deductive reasoning, common sense, and some compassion for the unwell human being at the centre of it all.